We're back here the whole 9 yards on a Saturday afternoon. Brandon, how is it going?
It's good. I moved up 2 days ago. You haven't moved up yet, but we were talking about it before. But yeah,
I'll actually
it's
be, I'll go, I'm probably going tomorrow. So,
yeah. So the
so yeah,
next the next episode should probably be in the podcast studio, right?
yeah, I believe so. Should be what I think we talked about the dates, but I believe either Monday or Tuesday. I forget which day we talked about. I think Monday, but anyways, we haven't recorded in a bit, but surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, hasn't been too much going on really in the sports world. But we did get a trade yesterday, I want to say, involving Lauri Markkanen. He was one of pretty much the only, I guess, if you want to call him big name free agents left. I don't know really know that he was a big name, but one of the only names, I guess, really left in free agency. He was a sign and trade from the Bulls to the Cavs, and the full details. Um, Lauri Markkanen to Cleveland, Larry Nance Jr. to Portland, and Derrick Jones Jr. a first round pick and additional draft compensation to Chicago. So Denver 2023 second is that additional uh, draft compensation. So I guess my initial reactions were it makes sense that Markkanen was never going to go back to Chicago. Everything I heard was pretty much that he's done with Chicago and that it was similar to like a Ben Simmons thing, except he was a free agent and Ben Simmons isn't. But it made sense. And I think if you're the Bulls, you just try to get anything you can for Markkanen in a sign and trade, and whatever you get is whatever you get. So, if you made me give the Bulls a grade, I'd give him an A. I mean, I don't maybe I'd give him a B. I don't know. Like I don't have a grade for them necessarily, just because like they got what the most they could get for him, and that's that. The Cavs, it's a little bit confusing just because they have so much, they don't have a lot of room in the front court. And I know Markkanen said he wanted to start. He's getting paid, and Markkanen definitely wanted that. I think it was 60 something $1 million over 4 years. So he's getting paid, but I don't think he's going to start day one. I'd be surprised. I mean, Jared Allen's probably going to start at the five, and I don't know who I mean, I don't see Markkanen starting at the four. And not only do I not see him starting short term, but Mobley's going to be that second piece in the front court long term. So I don't see a world in which Markkanen gets to start ever almost. And I don't know that training Larry Nance was the right call. I can see, and I think for the Cavs, if your end goal is to win a championship, Markkanen has more upside than Nance, but it's not like Nance couldn't be a part of a championship winning team. I mean, he's a guy that his father played for Cleveland and kind of embraced Cleveland. And I know Cleveland fans liked Larry Nance. So it might have sucked for them to have to let go and trade him to the Blazers. But for long term success, it makes sense. But I don't love it. If you made me grade the Cavs, I'd give him a B. It makes sense in terms of potential, but it could really end up being just a bad trade if the contract doesn't work out, which there's potential for it to not be a good contract. In the Blazers, I'd give him a B plus or an A minus. I'll give him an A minus. It's a really small trade, so maybe you give him a B plus. I don't know, but I mean, they really didn't have to get rid of much. I think all they got rid of was Derrick Jones Jr. And the Portland protected first round, which is going to be what, pick 25. I mean, it's not going to be maybe 20, like at the best, probably. Um, for a guy who can actually play in your rotation and maybe help you win now. And Jones wasn't playing at all, really. So it maybe that first round pick comes up to be something, but it's lottery protected, so it really can't. So I'll give him a B plus.
Yeah, I like to trade. I kind of agree with you. I kind of like to trade for the Blazers the most, only because I think Larry Nance is he's a pretty solid player. Coming off your bench. For the Blazers, who thought Zach Collins was supposed to be that guy when they drafted him, he's been injured obviously every single year. He's on the Spurs now, so I'm not saying Lance would ever be that have the same potential as Collins was supposed to have, but to be a good defensive guy. Obviously, he can attack the rim. He could shoot a little bit, but he's pretty good on defense for a team like the Blazers that needs defense. I thought that was a solid pickup, and again, like you said, not giving up much. You just gave up, Derrick Jones Jr. and a protected, you gave up a protected first, but again, like you said, that's not going to be that important for your future, anyways. So, I liked it for the Blazers. For the Cavs, yeah, is Markkinen going to start? Maybe he starts day one, maybe if you want to bring Mobley off the bench, but I think Mobley's going to start. I'd just be surprised if he's not starting right away. I don't think it's going to be like a Wiseman situation where they try to start him right away, then he clearly just can't play, and then they have to put him on the bench. I think Mobley, even if he struggles, he's still going to stay in there because I think he's a better guy than Wiseman is. So I think he's probably going to be in the starting lineup the whole time. Obviously, Allen, you signed him to a big deal. He's obviously going to be in there. If they were to trade Sexton, then maybe Markkinen could stay. You'd have a huge lineup, but maybe he could go in the starting rotation. You'd have Garland at the 1, Okoro at the 2, and then like Markkinen, Mobley, Allen. That's a huge lineup, but that's a possibility. But if you're not going to trade Sexton, at least right now, there's just no room for him there. So, he's probably going to be a bench guy. Maybe you trade him at some point, for a future pick or a few, another couple role players that probably fit your team better when your team is, on the incline, which it seems like I do like their talent that they have there, and Garland, Sexton, Okoro, Allen, and Mobley. So they do have a lot of talent, but it's probably still another 2 years, 3 years away from being like a true, at least playoff team, that kind of team. So Markkinen could be available in trades in the next year or two, possibly, because I agree. He doesn't really fit this team right now, how it is. Or even Allen gets traded. Mobley goes to the 5, and Markkinen's the 4. That's a possibility as well. So, yeah, I don't really know how to grade it just because I don't know exactly how it's going to work right now. But I'd probably say a B just to be safe, for the Cavs, which that's not good. It's not great, but I think it's all right. Adding a guy like that who averaged 19 points, his second year in the league clearly he has talent. Just the injuries and kind of falling out of rotation in Chicago kind of just that's what drove him out. So we'll see what happens. But I think it was a decent trade.
Yeah, my biggest thing is it just doesn't fit this team at all because I don't see Markkinen being able to play the 3. His biggest
Yeah.
weakness is lateral quickness, and he's just too big and not quick enough to guard a 3. He's not even quick enough to guard 4s really. So like that's his biggest weakness. If he was all right on the defensive end, then he'd be probably just way better of a player because he can shoot 40% from 3. He can stretch the floor. He can be a modern big, but his biggest problem is he just can't defend. And, on the Cavs, unless I really wouldn't want him playing on anything other than like maybe the 4 and the 5 pretty much. So it's just like tough to find him space. But at the end of the day, I mean, you really don't give up much. I mean, you're giving up Nance, who's a guy that, isn't going to help you now realistically and isn't going to help you later on, probably. So yeah. But was there any other NBA news? Wasn't there something we want? I forget.
Well, Kevin Love.
Kevin Love. Yes. So Kevin Love talked about how he wasn't interested in a buyout. I mean, I'm not really, I don't know as far as Kevin Love's concerned. I'm not sure if he's good. I'm pretty sure he's not good anymore. And I'm not sure if he's like, even like able to be on a championship contending team. Like, how good is he at this point? I'm not sure. I mean, injury wise, is he going to be consistent on the court? Even if he's healthy, is he going to be consistent? I don't know what you get out of him anymore, realistically.
Yeah, I don't know either. Even if he's healthy, which is a big concern, I mean, he could still shoot and he could definitely still rebound. So I mean, he can still do that. The defense obviously was never there. It's not going to be there now. So he obviously would be off the bench, a limited role, a guy who can stretch the floor for you if you need it. It obviously would only fit on certain teams, but he said he's not interested in a buyout. He has 2 years, 60 million left on his contract. So maybe that changes halfway through the season when the buyout season comes. Maybe not, but it I don't know. He doesn't seem like he wants to move. I don't know why he wouldn't want to move, to be honest, or to work towards a buyout. Only because Cleveland's not going to go anywhere. They obviously don't really want you there. Getting Markkinen, that's a guy who's in your position, who's basically just a younger you, technically. So it seems weird for him not to want to buy out. Go to a championship team, whether it's a Lakers, a Clippers, a Nets, or whatever, one of those kind of teams. You're going to be off the bench. You're not going to play a lot, but you just have to accept it, kind of what Blake Griffin did. And I like Blake Griffin more than I do Kevin Love because he can still play defense a little bit. He's still pretty athletic. He's not what he once was, but he's still pretty athletic. And he could shoot and ball handle and everything. So if he just does that, just play his role on a team like that, then he's going to be somewhat productive. And he obviously has a better chance at a championship. So it's confusing. Maybe there's something else that we just don't know about it exactly. But yeah, I don't know why he wouldn't want to buy out at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one reason why he wouldn't want to buy out is just the money. I mean, he's just if he gets bought out and he signs for another team for, 5 million for the rest of the year, he's just flat out, losing out on what, probably at least $30 million, if I'm correct. It's
Yeah,
a
it's just I don't know. It's just like he's made so much money. I mean, like it's weird to say when you haven't done that, but like you make like he's made at least 100, 200, 300 million dollars. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, if I was in his spot, I don't know what I would do. I would. Okay, my timer just went off. So we're just gonna act like that didn't happen. But I mean, if I was in his spot, I don't know what I would be doing. But I mean, he's already won a championship, and he was the third best player on that championship. So it's not like he's like, needs to chase a ring. It's not like he's Griffin where like he doesn't have a ring. He never really came close. And maybe he can kind of be that, like, fill that Andre Iguodala role on the Nets. He doesn't have that really. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't blame him for not wanting to pursue a buyout. I think that he could retire today and even if he won a championship with, let's just say, the Lakers or something, or the Nets, like, I don't think that changes his the outlook on his career at all. So I think you could just argue he's perfectly fine staying there and trying to get as much money as he possibly can for realistically probably doing nothing.
Yeah, I think that having the championship before probably helps his case of not wanting to buy out because, like you're right, like Griffin, Carmelo, like they obviously haven't won one. They kind of went for the money more, especially in Melo's case. But now they realize that like they really want a championship, you got to be off the bench, play your role, do what you have to do for the team. So if he never won one, I definitely think he probably would. But you're right, with him winning one, you can at least argue it a little bit more for his side. In that at least maybe this season, maybe when next season comes, he wants the buyout may come, but I guess 2 years, 60 million, I guess that is a lot. So yeah, I definitely could see it if you're looking at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, right now, would you have Kevin Love in the Hall of Fame?
I mean, they take all like the Olympics and stuff. I know I think he won one gold medal. I think 2012 he was on that team. I don't think he was on 2016. So I guess he's one gold medal, one championship. He's made a couple All-Stars. I guess you have to look. I think everyone in basketball makes the Hall of Fame. It's like it's such an open Hall of Fame, unlike baseball. Even football, people are now kind of making it more, but even that's a little more like closed down. Basketball, it seems like everyone makes it. So honestly, he probably is a pretty good shot. If you look at his whole career.
If you could make your own Hall of Fame, you wouldn't have him in, though. Pretty much is what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. No, I would agree. I think he'll probably make the real basketball Hall of Fame. But would he be in my basketball Hall of Fame? Definitely not. I mean,
Yeah.
What would your basketball Hall of Fame look like? I mean, what would your cutoff be? I don't know if you can try to give me like a player that would be like on that, territory of like, you don't know if he would make it into yours or not, but
I don't know if I could think of a player, but what I always think about is in baseball, like some criteria for it, or a big criteria, at least a lot of guys have for that, like the writers and everything, is like, was your prime? Did you have like 7 prime years where you were like at your position? Were you like rather the top guy, top 3, or top 5 guy? Like, were you in that era or that status of players for your position for at least like 7 years? If like, because normal careers maybe like 12 to 15 years if you're that kind of player. So half that time you're in the majors or whatever, in NBA or NFL, were you like the top of your position? I think that matters a lot. Even if you have like, let's say you have 5 really good years, like your prime years, and you have a couple really other good years, maybe you win a championship, maybe you do a couple other things, then that obviously helps. But you kind of have to have at least 5 to 7 like really prime years, and then a couple maybe okay good years. Then obviously like a championship helps in some cases, some cases not, but that's kind of my criteria for that. You could probably pick a player that somewhat fits that, but that's probably what I'd say.
Would you have Chris Bosh in your Hall of Fame? I'm just like thinking around the players kind of.
Yeah, I think Chris Bosh. I mean, I think he'll be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I think he'll actually make the Hall of Fame. Then for my Hall of Fame, I think he would. I'd have to like actually look back at his career, but I think he would. I think he's like, would you rather Chris Bosh or Kevin Love? Yeah, I think you'd rather have Chris Bosh.
Chris
So
Bosh, yeah.
yeah, and I
I don't
think
think
he's
Chris Bosh
much
would be in
better.
mine. I don't think I'm
Oh,
like
really?
90% sure he would not make mine. I
I
don't know.
think I think he'd make mine.
I if it was up to me, I would have almost all the Hall of Fames be pretty strict. And I think baseball does the best job at it. But even baseball, at times, there's some like head scratching calls on people making
Yeah,
the Hall of
yeah,
Fame that you're like, well, this guy made it, but this guy didn't. Like, there are some head scratching decisions. And I don't know that the steroid topic has been handled the best possible way, too, just because I won't even get into it. But like, would a guy like Carmelo be in your Hall of Fame?
for sure. Yeah.
Like, he wouldn't be in my Hall of Fame.
I mean, is that just like a bias thing? Because
It might
there's
be
no
a
reason that he
slight
wouldn't.
bias thing. So early in Carmelo's career, I should say, like, once he was in when he was in his prime in New York, I was not a Carmelo guy, and I wasn't really a Carmelo guy in Denver, but I was probably a little bit too young to even understand what basketball really, really was. But when I understood basketball, I was never a big Carmelo guy. I wanted to be a Carmelo guy when he got traded to OKC because I was like, well, I've always hated on Carmelo, and I have a friend who loves Carmelo, and I've never liked Carmelo, but if he's not, the ball hog, high usage rate, can't really play with him type of guy, he can, if he can be what he was in the Olympics, kind of, but maybe not as talented, but in OKC, then he could actually be a big part of a championship team, and he never really showed it. Um, and then I think it was eventually once he got to Portland, it was almost too little, too late, and now he's just nothing close to where he was, obviously. But the ability to me where I can't ever say that Carmelo could have been a one on a championship team. And I'm not sure that he ever could have been a two. So it's tough. Like skill wise, he could have easily been a two, but realistically, who would have to be that number one for him to be able to be the number two? You could honestly argue that for a third best player too. And I think if he's the third best player, you probably just went on talent similar to the Nets would be right now. But that's where I have to get for me to say, yeah, I think Carmelo could be on a championship team. As a first or second best player, it's really tough for me to say he could be. And that's kind of where I have to say he can't make my Hall of Fame.
Well, I think earlier in his career, I think when he was on Denver and maybe the first couple years in New York, not like probably like before 2014, maybe even 2013, before that, I'd say he probably could have been the second best player on a championship team. He was just like, even he was still like the same player, but he was just different. Then like at the end of New York, he kind of just, it was just all about him. At least when he was in Denver in the beginning of New York, it was a little different, but I think like a perfect player for him. And I know we don't like him, but Chris Paul, I think if him and Chris Paul were on the same team in the late 2000s, early 2010s, with them, Chris Paul was obviously still one of the best players in the league. Melo was one of the best players in the league. They could have been a 1-2 option. Now, who would be the one? Who would be the two? I don't even know. I don't think it would matter. But I think that'd be a perfect fit because you're right. Like you can't. There's not a lot of fits with Melo being the 1 or 2. You'd kind of need like a point guard like Chris Paul who will take the shot, but also he's not. Obviously, he's willing to give the ball up and then have Melo take the shot. Which Melo has the talent to do that. He could have been one of those shot makers and stuff. He just never really had the chances or the teams to really do that. So that's probably the player I'd pick. But to not have him in your Hall of Fame, I think is crazy. I mean, he's a top 20 scorer of all time. Even if he's never won a championship, he's probably ruined his chances at a championship with him being one of the best players on the team with his actions. I mean, you can't say like is Westbrook going to be in the Hall of Fame, in your Hall of Fame? Because he's technically, done it his way and not really on the team way. I mean, if you say he's not in the Hall of Fame, then I think that's crazy. And he's done technically more accolade wise than Melo, even though Melo has 4 Olympic rings, which obviously you can't take away from that, or three or 4, whatever it is. But
In my
I mean,
basketball Hall of Fame, I don't care about the Olympics. That's
I don't either. I think it's dumb, but I mean, when you win 4, I think it matters.
like congratulations, you beat like Nicholas Batum. I mean, come on, like this is what we're talking about. Like I don't
Yeah,
care.
I
I'm
mean,
sorry, but Westbrook would actually be a close call, and I know that's probably bad to say, but
that's crazy.
But I don't know. I have to think about it. But realistically, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get into Westbrook, but Carmelo, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think more about it. I don't think he would make it though. And on that Chris Paul Carmelo thing, I think it'd be similar to how the Suns are now. Obviously, they'd both be way better than Chris Paul is now and Devin Booker is now. But I think it'd be like, Chris Paul's kind of the heart and soul, but Devin Booker's probably the more talented
Yeah.
player. I think it'd be similar to that. But obviously, they're just a better team because those guys are just better. But if it was like late 2000s, early 2010s, I'm not sure this year that they win the championship. I mean, let's just say it starts in 2008. Would they beat that Celtics team that won 66 games? I don't think so. In 2009, do they beat the Lakers? I mean, I guess it would depend on what team they were, because if they were in the East, they
Well,
might have a chance in the finals. But there's not a year that I would definitively pick them in the finals in that late 2000s, early 2010s. And because of that, I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt, because Carmelo had the 100% the chances. He had the perfect chances to like become a part of a championship winning team, and he never did it. And to me, that's I have to dock him. And I know that's kind of hypocritical, because I'll commend a guy like Lillard who's loyal, and hate on a guy like KD who's a quote unquote snake. But I have to dock him for that.
but the one thing I'll say is that the best player he played with was Allen Iverson at the end of Denver, and they had that great team. I think it was 2009. I think it was maybe 2010, where they played the Lakers. I think in the second round, maybe even the conference finals, and they lost to them that year. If that's probably his best shot at getting to a championship was then, like in his prime, obviously, and his best player was Allen Iverson. Now, if that's Chris Paul and not basically the same exact player as Melo, but just a shorter version of him, that's Chris Paul on that team. Do they beat that Lakers team? I think you have a better possibility of beating that Lakers team. Even those Celtics and Lakers teams, they were good, and maybe the wins showed that they were maybe better than good. Maybe they were great, but those teams were kind of flawed a little bit, especially that Celtics team. I mean, it wasn't they obviously the big three, but at times some of those guys disappeared a little bit. So I think that team probably now, if we were to put Chris Paul on that Nuggets team, you have to look back at the team and everything, but I think that I don't know if I could say they definitely win one, but I think they have a really good shot at winning one championship in that 4 to 5 year window from 2008 to 2011. I think they have a pretty good shot.
That's as far as I'd be willing to go. Is if you put Chris Paul on that Nuggets team, they have a good shot at winning one championship.
But that's really all
And
you need, though, is one. I mean,
but that's the problem, is he didn't do that. I mean,
no, but like I was saying, his best player was Allen Iverson. Again, I don't love Melo, but to be fair, the best player he's played with in his prime was Allen Iverson, and that was at the end of his prime. And it's like I said, the exact same player that Melo is. So
yeah, I don't know. I'd have to rewatch that Nuggets Lakers series. I wouldn't be able to tell you if with Chris Paul they win that series or not. I'd have to watch it, and then I'd have to, think about it. But right now, I wouldn't have Carmelo in my Hall of Fame. Maybe if I go back and do some rewatching of series, I would be able to convince myself to put him in. But that's like the typical player that I don't like, and I don't think works. And I don't think it would 100% work even if it was Chris Paul and Carmelo. But anyways, we'll move on. Maybe we can talk about some more Hall of Fame stuff at a later point. But NFL, we did have a small trade, I guess we'll call it. The Jaguars dealt Gardner Minshew to the Eagles for a 2022 conditional sixth, I want to say. And I mean, I guess I'll get your first reactions on that trade.
yeah, and also if Minshew plays more than 50% of the plays in 3 games this season, then it turns into a fifth rounder. So I mean, I would assume that probably happens, but I don't know. I mean, obviously, it looks like Hurts is the starter. Obviously, with Minshew being traded there, if this happened before the preseason, then maybe there'd be a battle at that point. But it being the last week of the preseason, Hurts has obviously been there for a year, even though it's a new coach and everything. He's obviously been there, so I still assume Hurts would be the starter from day one. It seems like Flacco is the backup, so it does seem like Minshew is number 3. Now, I would assume he would overtake Flacco as the backup. Obviously, I think I'd rather have Minshew than Flacco, even though Flacco's looked pretty good in the preseason. But obviously, I think I'd rather have Minshew. So does this mean anything for Hurts during the season? I think if he struggles a little bit, I think the Eagles somewhat think they can compete this year. Obviously, the division isn't great, and we're gonna go over win totals after this, but I still think they're the last team in that division by a good margin. I don't think that they can really end up being first place. They'd have to have a lot of breaks go their way, and I don't see that happening. So I think but in their minds, I think they still think that they can compete. And if Hurts struggles, then I think they will bench him for Minshew, which I don't know if I agree with because I don't love Hurts, but I think he's solid. I think he's a solid quarterback. Now, will he be your franchise quarterback? No, but I think he's solid for a couple of years. You could definitely have him start. You could definitely win games with a solid roster around him. So I wouldn't love that if I'm an Eagles fan. If he gets benched for Gardner Minshew, who's obviously not your franchise quarterback. So I don't know how I feel about this yet. If that's the way they're going to go with it, I don't agree with it. If you want him to just be your backup and Hurts is your starter, you're going with him no matter what, unless he severely struggles. I like that a lot better than possibly, maybe both of them playing or one guy struggles, then the other guy comes in, back and forth. I don't like that option as much as the first option.
If you're an Eagles fan, this trade has to be concerning to you. There's a reason that the Jaguars are willing to trade a guy like Minshew, and the Eagles are willing to trade for a guy like Gardner Minshew, and that's just faith in the number one quarterback. The Jaguars
Yeah.
are completely sold on Trevor Lawrence, not only because he was number one pick, but because they just know what they have. The Eagles probably have not that much faith in Hurts. They're like, yeah, I mean, we have Hurts. Obviously, we kind of had to trade Wentz. But we don't have 100% faith in Hurts, and I think that shows by trading for a guy like Minshew. He's a guy that can fill for Hurts if he gets hurt, or a guy that can fill for Hurts if Hurts is just bad. And he's probably, I mean, Minshew's what, probably like around that 32nd best quarterback range, and you're trading for a guy like that. I don't know that that speaks volumes about Hurts's performance. If they had traded for Minshew in the offseason at some point, I think that actually would be better for the Eagles, just because you kind of are doing it as, oh, we'll take a chance on him more of a thing, or, he'll be a really good backup and better than Flacco. But trading for him now kind of is like almost desperate. It's
Yeah.
it's almost assuring the fact that Hurts isn't going to play all 17 games, whether it be because they think that his play style will result in injury or that he's just flat out not good. And they probably also don't have much faith in Flacco as a backup either. And I think eventually, once Minshew gets a little bit more comfortable with the offense, because I'm sure it's not a super fluid transition, but eventually I think Flacco will probably be the third string, like you said. But I mean, this just shows that next year they're probably going to be drafting a quarterback. I forget what pick they drafted with this year, 12th, and they traded up to Tyreek Smith, right?
Yeah.
Um,
After they
so
were
that
originally sixth. Yeah.
so they could have had essentially Fields or Jones, right? They couldn't have had Lance, they couldn't have had Wilson, they couldn't have had Lawrence, but
Yep.
they could have had Fields or Jones, and they chose not to. So if next year we're looking at the Eagles drafting the best quarterback because they have like the first or second pick, um, and if either Fields or Jones look really good, then you have to look at the Eagles front office and just question it, because you really put faith in the second rounder who played like, I don't know, okay in a couple games the season before, instead of drafting a guy like Fields who was as high as the second best quarterback in the draft, and a guy like Mac Jones who had only looked like maybe the most consistently good quarterback in all of college football, even more consistent than Lawrence at times. I don't know. I mean, it's just, to me, you have to really question the Eagles front office if Hurts is bad.
Yeah. And if next year they say it's not a great quarterback class. Now, obviously that can change throughout the season. You have guys like Zach Wilson or Trey Lance that come up. So we don't know yet. But to have a guy like Fields who has been rock solid since, obviously he didn't play his first year in college, but ever since he's been playing, and he's always been number two behind Lawrence, since high school and everything. Yeah, to pass up on a guy like that, when you had 6, you trade down to 12, and you still could have taken him at 12 and you go back to 10 to take Smith. You had multiple chances to get him. Now at that point, I think they still had Wentz when the draft happened, right? I'm pretty sure they still had Wentz. So maybe that's somewhat of a reason. Now I wouldn't love that being the reason that you knew you were going to trade him, but obviously his trade value would go down a little bit if you draft a quarterback for the future. I don't know if that's a reason or not. If it is, I don't like it, but maybe that was one. But I think that Yeah, passing up on Fields. Where in Chicago, I mean, I guess we can talk about this when the season starts, but he may be starting week one, possibly. Now, Nagy keeps saying no, but once Dalton struggles, Fields is going right in, and I don't think he's ever going to come back out. So it could be a big mistake if Fields turns out to be, a top 10 quarterback, pretty soon in the future, and Hurts, obviously he's not going to come anywhere close to that. So it's probably going to be a mistake.
Yeah, this Eagles front office has been a wreck. We'll see if the firing of Doug Peterson is a good move in hindsight. I feel like it'll end up being a net neutral because I don't know that I like Sirianni or Peterson all that much. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's kind of that. I guess one last thing before we wrap this episode up, and it's not really one last thing, but one thing is we're going to be doing over/under predictions for NFL win totals for the 32 teams, and today we're going to do one conference, and that's going to be the NFC. So I'm just going to give you teams from the NFC. These odds are according to DraftKings. So I will just start from the lowest win total odds to the highest, and you're just going to give me over under, and I'll give a little bit something too. So actually, are you able to like record, like write down what we say, like in terms of the predictions?
Yeah, I'll write it down.
Okay. All right, so we'll start with the Lions, which are the lowest win total for the NFC, and they're at 4.5. And while you get that set up, I will go first. To me, the Lions, I think they're going to be right around that 4-win territory, but I'm gonna go over. I think it's just there's 17 games, and the NFL is the NFL. Just upsets happen. Um, and there's odds that Dan Campbell is a good head coach, and that's kind of if he's a bad good coach, which he probably is, he's still going to be around that 4.5 win total. But if he's a good head coach, they can maybe get that 6 or 7 win total and be a little bit surprising and show some upside. So I'll go with the over, but I think regardless, it's going to be around 4.5. So it's kind of a coin toss to me.
So 4.5.
Yep.
I mean, I wish we had their schedules in front of us, but just straight off the dome, I'd probably say I'm gonna say under. I think they get 4 wins. I think they'll be under, and they'll get 4 wins. I don't. I mean, I don't hate Goff. I don't love him, obviously. I don't hate him though. I think he's okay. Now the problem is that they have no receivers at all in that team, which obviously is a problem. The O line's obviously going to be, I think, decent with obviously the Penei Sewell there. The defense, it's a pretty bad defense, but maybe Okuda is obviously still in that secondary. I feel like he's very forgotten there, but yeah, I think they'll win a couple games. They may like take a game off someone that was pretty unexpected, but obviously they're going to lose a lot of games. So I think 4 wins is probably where I'll have them. So yeah, I'm gonna go under.
Next is the Eagles at 6.5.
Eagles at 6.5. I'm gonna go under. I like what we were just saying. Whether it's Hurts all season, whether it's Hurts, then Minshew, then maybe back and forth, whatever it is. I don't love their quarterbacks, either one of them. Clearly, that defense has had some wear and tear on it the last couple of years. Now they still have a couple players there, but for the most part, a lot of guys who have been injured, a lot of veterans. Then the guys who are coming up and playing, especially in that secondary, aren't amazing. And we'll see if Devontae Smith can stay healthy. Now, if he can stay healthy, maybe he could be a big contributor for them. But again, that's a little bit of a question with his frame and then a couple injuries he's had already. So, yeah, I think under. I don't know exactly how many wins they'd have, but yeah, under.
Yeah, to me, when I first saw 6.5, I was like, wow, that's actually pretty high for the Eagles, who are
Yeah,
supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league. The only reason to me that they would be at 6.5 is because
yeah.
the division is just probably the worst in the league. I'm going to go under two, though. I don't love the quarterback situation. And to me, Gardner Minshew, the trade, assures the fact that they don't like the quarterback situation. So I'll go under. I think they're going to be a top 4 pick in the draft. And if they were to get 6 wins, let's say they get 7 wins, because that would make both of us wrong. They'd go over. Let's say they get 7 wins, that would put them not at the 4th team. So I'll go under, and because I think they are a bottom 4 team in the league. Next up is the Giants at 7 wins. That's pretty high, but I think they're gonna be at exactly 7. So are they more likely to be over 7 or under 7? I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
I It just comes down to the quarterback. I think this team, as a team without the quarterback, I think it's easily over 7 wins. They obviously have a great, I don't know about great defense, but a really good defense that can be great, especially if they repeat what they did last year. If Saquon comes back healthy, you have Galladay. If he can have a big year and stay healthy, that's also another question. The offensive line's a little bit of a question right now. So I would say quarterback's the biggest problem, then offensive line, and then health of your other, star players on your offense. So if the quarterback can be just decent, solid, if he can just not turn the ball over and just make the plays that he has to, I think they can for sure get over 7. Now it's a lot of trust in that. So uh, I think I'm going to go over. I don't know if Jones is even going to be good this year, but I just think that defense is probably going to win him a couple games. And, to get 8 wins, I think they can get 8 wins. If they don't, I think they'll be around that 7, 8 wins no matter what, but I think they can get 8 wins.
Yeah, I'm gonna go under. To me, I think the most likely win total for them is 7 or 8, but
Yeah.
there's not much room for injury there. Like I'm betting on, people staying healthy. I'm betting on Jones being, the 20th best quarterback in the league, probably. And to me, I think it's actually might be more likely that they get an injury or two. Let's just say Galladay is out for 5 of the 17 weeks, which he might even be out for more of that, or Saquon's out for 5 weeks, or Jones just isn't good and he's clearly not the guy. I'm gonna go under. I'm not a Jones guy. I think this is his last year as a starting quarterback in the NFL ever, probably. Um, so yeah. After that is the Falcons at 7.5. Ooh, to me, I'm gonna go over. The reason I'm gonna go over is because I actually kind of like the Falcons. To me, Matt Ryan is still a top 16 quarterback in the league, and he's a guy that is gonna throw the ball. He's gonna get a lot of passing yards, and he might throw some picks too, but he should be a top 12 quarterback, honestly, when he's healthy and playing well. Obviously not having Jones is huge, is massively unfortunate, but Ridley's a guy who's a lot younger than Jones and should be able to, fill that role as a number one. He should be able to be a number one receiver in the league and be an above average number one. Um, Obviously, losing Julio still sucks because being for Ridley to be able to be a 2 would have been huge as well, but Ridley should still be fine. The addition of Kyle Pitts should be a huge weapon as well. I don't love the defense, and we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. We'll see how the new head coach is, Arthur Smith. I want to say his name is right. That was Arthur
Yeah.
Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see how he is. It's a question mark, but I'll go over.
Se- I lo- I like this team, but I don't love this number. I mean, 7.5. I think that division is going to be a lot tougher than maybe people are thinking it will be. But I really do like the Falcons, like kind of like the points you said. I mean, I've always liked Matt Ryan. I think he is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Now, is he, the MVP that he was before? No, but I think he's still a solid quarterback. He does obviously turn the ball over a little too much in key situations, but 7.5, I think is just tough. It's that defense still has a couple questions on it. So I think I'm gonna go under, but I'm going at 7, and I really wouldn't be surprised if they go over. I think that if that offense can work with Ridley and Kyle Pitts, and obviously Matt Ryan, being like you said, a top 12 quarterback, then I would like him over. But I just think that defense is gonna fault them a little bit, and that division is just a tough division. So unless they do really good against that in their division, I think they're going to go under.
Bears 7.5. I'm gonna go under here. I'm not a big Nagy person. I like Nagy, but I don't love him, and I think this is probably his last year. I think he probably took way too much time trying to develop Mitch Trubisky. Clearly was never going to be the guy. And now this year with the start, it's like people are already clamoring for Fields to be the starter day one, and they're going to let Dalton start. And I think Dalton's not going to be great. I think he's going to be like the 25th quarterback in the league, probably around there. And when does Fields start, and is Fields going to look good? Is the talent around him great? Is the division around him tough? I see this team being the third best team in the division. I think the Vikings are more talented. I think they should rebound. I think they'll be better than the Bears are this year. I think this is probably Pace's and Nagy's last year. I'm going to go under.
Yeah, I'm going under as well. Dalton, I mean, he's not. I saw him last year play. He's not that good unless you have like a really stacked team with him, which the Bears do not. He's not going to be able to win you a lot of games. And even if Fields comes in, even though I like Fields, I don't know how many games he's going to be able to win. I do expect that defense to be better than it was last year, but still, that's like asking a lot for your defense. It basically has to be what you were in 2018, right? 2018 when they were like 12-4. The defense carried them through that entire season. Unless the defense is like that again, which I don't expect it will be that good, I don't see him winning a lot of games. And whenever that change happens between Dalton and Fields, obviously it's going to be at a time when they're struggling, so they'll probably lose 2 or 3 in a row, and then Fields will come in. So I think they're going to meet a hole early, and I don't know if Fields can, take him out of that.
Panthers 7.5. They have them at the same win total as the Falcons. To me, it's tough. I think it's tough for me to go over on the Panthers because am I going to pick both of these teams to be over 7.5 in the same division? No. So I'm going to go under. I think it's going to be close though. I think they're probably at 7 wins or 6 wins. I think they're going to be a really competitive team. I like Darnold. I do like Darnold. I like Darnold more than the average person right now, probably. Obviously, CMC to me is the best running back in the NFL. I know others might disagree with that, but to me, when healthy, he's the best in the running out of the running backs, and it's honestly not close for me. But and I like Rule. I don't know that I love Rule, but I think Rule can be a good coach in this league. So I just don't know if they have the ultimate talent, really. As much as I do like Darnold, he's not developed yet. He's going to take still 2 more years to develop. And I think they should stick with it. But overall, I have them being slightly under that. But I think they'll show enough promise to the point where they're not looking to replace Darnold as a starting quarterback for next year.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't agree more. I have them under as well. I like the Falcons more than I do the Panthers. I think the Falcons are probably better than them. But yeah, I mean, we both love Darnold, or at least like him. I do think Matt Rule I think he's a pretty good coach. Obviously, it's only been a year or whatever, but I think he will be a pretty good coach. I do like him, and his philosophy and everything like that. So I think, like I said, the division's tough. I think they're just a little less talented than Atlanta is. So if I going under on Atlanta, I can't go over on the Panthers. So, but yeah, I agree. I think Darnold's going to be good this year. I mean, preseason has been pretty good so far. So I think he'll have a good year, and I think he'll probably be their quarterback for the future, or at least the next 4 or 5 years.
Washington 8.5. To me, this is under. I don't love Fitzpatrick, and that's what it comes down to. I think the defense is going to be borderline great. I think it's going to be a top 10 defense in the league, probably, and they're going to be able to win a handful of games. But I think at the end of the day, Fitzpatrick for the most part, either wins you the game or loses you the game. And I think he loses you the games a lot more times than he wins you a game. He may win you 3 or 4 games in the whole year, but he may lose you 8 or 9 games. And I think if you're already starting off with probably 7 losses just because Fitzpatrick's bad, there's not much room for the defense the defense has to play really well. And I don't know that this defense is a top 4 defense in the league, which I think they might have to be for them to be above 8.5. I don't love Fitzpatrick. He's never made the playoffs for a reason. This may be the best team he's ever had, but still, I don't love it. And I think this division, while it's not good, is still really competitive. I think on any given week, the Eagles could beat the Washington football team. I think the Giants could beat the Washington football team. I think the Cowboys could definitely beat the Washington football team. So I have them under, but I think it's close. It's close to 8.
Yeah, I'm under as well. It's the quarterback situation. The defense is going to be really good. Rivera is a pretty good coach. I've always liked him as a coach. But just like Fitzpatrick, I mean, we've seen it so many times in the past with Fitzpatrick where he's good for a couple weeks and then he's bad and then you have to replace him. Go sub in, sub out with the backup quarterback, who right now I think their backup quarterback is I don't even know who their backup quarterback is. It was the guy from last year,
It's Heineke.
Heineke.
I believe
Yeah,
so.
so I mean, that's one game last year. I mean, obviously he was pretty good in it, but are you really gonna is he gonna play like that for 4, 5, 6 games? No, obviously not. So this is like the Bears basically, just with a better team. I think it's just I have to go under. I think it will be 8 wins. I was thinking maybe I could put them at 9, but I just don't see the quarterbacks winning them like those. Those close games where you need your quarterback to come through. I don't see that happening for them, so that's why I have them at they probably win 8, but 7, 8, whatever it is, it's going to be around that. But yeah, I'm going under.
Cardinals at 8.5. This is tough. I think I'm. I'm gonna go under. To me, the division's too competitive. If this team was in any other division, I'd probably be going over. I love Murray. I don't hate Kingsbury, but I don't think he's a great coach. But he can make the playoffs as coach. I mean, we've seen much worse coaches make the playoffs to me, probably. Um, Obviously with D Hop, you've got talent around him, and I think Kyler Murray is a guy who, if his team did make the playoffs and was a good team overall, would be in the MVP conversation. I think he's going to be that guy that would have been in that conversation had his team been better, but I don't see his team being anything other than the worst team in this NFC West this year. So
Yeah, I think this is probably the toughest one. Just because of the division, like you said, like any other division, this team is for sure over, and their win totals obviously would be higher if they were in any other division as well. So I don't want to go under again. I've gone a lot of under, but I just don't know how they're getting over 8.5 wins. They have to be really good in that division. I mean, the Rams are better than they were last year. The Niners are better than they were last year, and the Seahawks are the same most likely. Maybe they're a little bit worse, but they're probably exactly the same. So I just don't see where those wins are coming from in the division. And they played pretty decently last year in the division. They always do play the Seahawks well, but it's just I think division's way better. Kingsbury, this is probably his last year, and assuming that they're not going to be great, whether they're under 500, which is what we're assuming. So it could be a big year for him, but I don't know. I think I have to go under, and I do love him. I do love Kyler Murray, but it's just such a tough division.
after the Cardinals, we have the Vikings at 9 wins. And to me, I'm gonna go over here. I think the Vikings, I
Really,
don't love the Vikings. I'm not a huge Vikings person, but to me, Kirk is still a solid quarterback. And I'm not a Zimmer person. I actually hate Zimmer, but I think talent wise, they're the second best team in the NFC North. And I don't love the Bears and I don't love the Lions, and they're going to get some free wins on those teams. I feel like, and I think they can maybe even take one from Green Bay. I'm going to go over. I think they probably are a 10-win team, and I think they're vying for that wild card spot. Do they end up getting it? Do they end up not? I think it'll be close, but I think they're a team that is in that wild card race from the beginning to the end.
I have him under. I don't like this team. I don't think Kirk Cousins is that good of a quarterback, to be honest. You're also assuming that Dalvin Cook is going to be healthy again. For even last year, he wasn't totally healthy, but you have to assume that 17 game season that he has to play at least like 14 of those games, 15 of those games, because obviously that's the heart and soul of your offense right there. I don't know if I trust that. He's had so many injury problems over his career, going back to college as well. So that's a lot to ask for. That defense is still solid, but that secondary is a huge question. Obviously, you lost pieces. Your best corner is Patrick Peterson, which I don't love at all because was good 5 years ago, not now. So I think they have questions in that secondary, and I'm putting a lot of trust in Cook being healthy. And I think the division is going to be easy. Obviously, we talked about the Bears and the Lions, but I don't know. I just don't have trust in Kirk Cousins to, win those big games. I just don't. So I have to go under, even though, and I think 9.5. I don't know. I feel like that's a lot, but maybe not. Maybe that's just the way I'm looking at it. But yeah, I'm going under.
Yeah, I'm going over, and I almost agree with everything you're saying. Almost everything, really, except I might have a little bit more trust in Kirk Cousins than you do. I don't know that I have trust him to win the biggest games, but I mean, I have trust on him to win regular season games. Even if it's a big Sunday night one, I still have trust in him to win that. Postseason, probably different. Um, but I think this team has enough talent around them with a not great division other than Green Bay to get above 9 wins. So next is Saints at 9. And I'll let you go first. I'll let you go first because I actually might have a different take than you might have on this one.
They're at 9, not 9.5 or 9.
9. The Vikings
Nine.
were actually at 9 as well, too, by the way. I know you
Oh,
said
they're
nine
at
and a
9.
half, but they were at 9.
Oh, okay,
So
okay. Yeah, I'm going over for the Saints. I really like the Saints, which is weird because in years past, even though I guess I have kind of liked the Saints in years past, but I think Winston's going to be really good this year. And they finally made the decision, which I guess we didn't really talk about, but Winston is the starting quarterback for this team, which obviously was the right move from the beginning. But I really like this team. Now, they have a lot of pieces on that team that are old and experienced, but I think that defense is still one of the better defenses in the league, at least in the NFC, for sure. I still think that. Offensively, now the Michael Thomas situation is definitely a situation that needs to be monitored, and we'll see what happens with him. But I think when the playing starts, I think he'll be there. Whether he's healthy or not, I don't know, but I think he will be there. Callaway's looked really good in the preseason. Kamara, he's still going to be one of the best running backs in the league. It's not going to be like what it was with Drew Brees, where he's doing everything. So I think that actually helps your team because now you're a little more, you have more options and more, ways that you can beat a team, not just with dumps and screens and running and slants and everything. You actually throw the deep ball, which Winston's very good at. So, and obviously Sean Payton's still your coach, really good in the regular season, always has been. So at 9, I think they're over for sure. I think they're going to be, I think they're for sure going to make the playoffs. I think obviously the Bucs are going to be above them, but yeah, I really do like the Saints this year.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a Saints hater since the beginning, pretty much, and I've, for the most part, been wrong. I mean, obviously they didn't beat the Bucs last playoffs, but for the most part, I've been wrong on the Saints, and I think most people would expect me to go under here. I'm going over as well. I think the Saints have a chance to win this division. I don't love Winston, but I like him, and I like Sean Payton as well, and I think that combo should theoretically work really well together. I think he may not truly be a top 16 quarterback in the league when given an average head coach, but when given Sean Payton, I think he can be a top 16 guy who may still make a lot of mistakes, but will also just have a lot of flashes of brilliance with a great arm and can still move out of the pocket at least somewhat. So I like Winston enough for this team to still be in the playoffs and probably be in that 11 win range. And people made a big situation out of their cap, but I've always been a person that's like, the cap is just crap. You can deal with it however you want. I mean, Bill Belichick has pretty much said it in open interviews. And nobody has a problem saying it. And I think people made way big a deal out of it. And Tik Tok, I literally 4 months ago saw somebody say the Saints were going to go 0-17 because what are they going to do about the cap? And the answer is you just find a way. I mean, you didn't have to trade Kamara. You didn't have to trade Michael Thomas. You didn't really have to let go of much. So, and that's just how it happens. And I think the Saints arguably, you could legitimately argue they're going to be better into this year than they were last year. I think there's a legitimate argument to be made. Maybe not in the regular season win total. Maybe they'll be similar. They probably will be pretty similar, probably a little bit less, but in the playoffs, they might actually have a chance to beat the Bucs because you have a quarterback that can actually win you that type of game that Drew Brees wasn't able to win.
Even last year, I mean, honestly, they probably should have beat the Bucs last year, to be honest. I mean, they had the lead multiple times. The Cook fumble, the Brees interceptions, obviously is on Brees, but I mean, they really should have won that game if you really look back at it. So for them to, I think we both agree, you just said it, I think they're better than they are last year. And if Winston can prove that he's not going to have the dumb turnovers, which I think he won't have anymore, at least the really dumb ones. Now, he'll still turn the ball over, but when it comes to the playoffs, if he can just not turn the ball over, I think they have a real shot at taking, a game or two off some of these teams, whether it's the Packers, Bucs, Rams, Seahawks. I think they can definitely take a game or two off them.
Yeah, I agree. The toughest thing is they were a first place team last year, so they do play a pretty difficult schedule overall. Like, you're gonna play the Packers, you're gonna play who won the Seahawks. Sorry, who won that division? The Seahawks. Yeah.
Seahawks.
Yeah. You're going to play the Seahawks. You're going to play all those first place teams. And obviously you're going to play the Bucs twice. So it is a very tough schedule overall, but yeah, I like this team. Cowboys at 9. I'll let the Cowboys fan go first.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to go over. I think it's 10 wins though, maybe 11, but I think 10. I think 10-7 probably wins this division. So yeah, I mean, Dak coming back, the shoulder, that I don't think it's a problem. I think that was blown out of proportions a little bit, but I think he'll be fine. I think Zeke looks a lot better. CeeDee Lamb looks 1,000 times better than he did his rookie season, which was still really good, but he had a lot of drops his rookie year. So, and that's looked a lot better so far. Cooper's being back healthy. I think the offense will be fine. It's just the defense. I think that's where it all lies. But, in this division where the two teams below you have a really good defense, but not great offense, I think that their offense could outshine against those defenses. And, that's really all that matters. As long as you go 4-2 or 5-1 in your division, you're most likely getting to 10 wins this year. Obviously with the extra game, that just seems like that's almost the case if you're a good team. So yeah, I think they're over. I have them as over, and I think it'll be 10 and maybe 11.
Yeah, I'm going to go over as well. To me, am I going to go under on all the NFC teams and have them all under 9 wins? To me, I don't see a way in which they're all under 9 wins. So I'm going to go Cowboys. I'm going to go over. I'd like this team the most in the NFC East as well, so it makes sense. But yeah, I think Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback easily when healthy. And I like Zeke. I've always liked Zeke. Obviously, he's not going to be what he used to be necessarily, but I still love Zeke. Uh, Cooper is still going to be a consistently top, 15 wide receiver in the league, if not higher than that. And CeeDee Lamb might be a top 10 guy this year. I mean, who knows? The defense, there's still plenty of question marks there. Is Micah Parsons going to be able to be enough to make this defense at least, a competent one? We'll see. Is just a new year going to help this team? I would assume so. I don't see them being as bad as they were last year, especially early on in the year. So, yeah, I'll go over. And there's no way I could go under on this team realistically. It doesn't even matter. I've already gone under on 3 NFC East teams. There's no way all 4 of them end up under 500 again.
Yeah,
Almost. Yeah.
yeah. Wait, were they 9 or 9.5?
They were 9 exactly.
Okay, no, okay.
So after the Cowboys, it is the Seahawks at 10. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think they'll go over. 10. I think I think last year they were 12-4 last year, and that was with some big struggles towards the end of the year. With Wilson, not even the defense, but offensively. So I don't expect that to happen again. Maybe they struggle a little bit. Obviously like we said, the division is tougher, but I think they'll get over 10 wins. Now, whether they win the division, I don't think so. I think I probably have LA winning that division, but yeah, I think they'll be at 11, 12 wins. They'll be around that range. That division, I mean, those top 3 teams are going to be all north of 10 wins, which is crazy to think about in one division. But yeah, I have them over 10.
Yep, I 100% agree. Seahawks, I have them over 10 as well. The division is the only reason to not go over 10 to me, really. And Russell Westbrook. Russell Wilson is, speaking of not Hall of Fame, Russell Wilson is he's a guy that we're going to do our war predictions later at some point before the regular season kicks off, but he's a guy that I was maybe a small spoiler, but there's a very strong chance he might be my MVP this year. I know it's not the most popular pick. I think that was a very popular pick last year, but I think a popular pick this year is like Kyler Murray or something like that. But Russell Wilson could be my MVP this year, so I'm going to go over 10. Packers at 10 exactly as well. I'm going to go over here. To me, I think Rodgers is just too talented, and I think this team is still too talented. The defense is good enough. The offense has plenty of pieces. I mean, in bringing back Jones, obviously you have Adams, Valdez-Scantling. You still have pieces. Obviously, losing Corey Linsley is unfortunate, but there's no way. I mean, this division's not good. I don't like the Bears. I don't like the Lions. The Vikings I like, but Packers should win both of those games anyways. They should sweep the division realistically. They may not. They may go 5-1, but that alone is good enough that this team should be in the 12 or 13 win range, especially with an extra game this year.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think the worst they do in the division is 4-2, and that's probably like the last week of the season where they don't care and they just lose one game. So basically 5-1 or 6-0. Not losing Linsley hurts. Bakhtiari did tear. I think he tore his ACL. Last year right before the playoffs, so he shouldn't be ready for the start of the regular season. I don't think. I mean, he should miss a couple of games, which could hurt. But like you said, this division, you're probably going 5-1, maybe even 6-0. So just to get 4 to 5 more wins, I think you easily get that. They're way too talented. Rodgers is still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Adams, Jones, everyone. The defense isn't great, I will say, but it should be enough.
Yeah, I would agree. I would be shocked if this team finished under 10. 49ers at 10.5. To me, 49ers at 10.5. I'm going to go over. I think it's a really tough spot because I think they're going to be at that 10 range. But if they're under, to me, they're 10. I don't know that the team goes 9 wins. And I realistically, I love the Rams, 49ers, and Seahawks. I love all 3 of those teams. And I think I can afford to go under on a bunch. I went under on a bunch of those lower teams. So I think I can go over on these teams and not be too scared of it. I think realistically, the Seahawks, Rams, and 49ers can all be above 10 wins, and it would be realistic. I love Jimmy G still. I'm higher on him than most. Even we'll see when Trey Lance plays. Is it going to be this year? I don't know. There's a chance that if the 49ers are just still great this year, that he doesn't play at all, and Jimmy G can definitely still get above 10 wins for me as a starting quarterback of the Niners. So I'm going to go over. Injuries is their biggest concern to me, and the division.
Yeah, I'm gonna go under, but I think it'll be 10 wins. I think they'll get 10 wins. If the number was 10, I don't know what I'd go because I think they're pretty solidified at being that 10-win team. I think the question for them is is Jimmy G gonna play the entire season or is Lance gonna come in at some point? I'd be very surprised if Lance didn't come in at some point. That seemed like that was Shanahan guy. I mean, they moved up to get him when they most likely probably could have got him at the spot they were at, or at least could have, not traded all the way up to number 3. So I think he's gonna have to play at some point. Once they lose like 2 games, or maybe they're like, 2-3, possibly whatever the situation is, I could easily see Lance going in. And he's obviously a different quarterback than Garoppolo is with the mobility and everything. So I just don't know what's going to happen there. And if he comes in, is he going to be as good as he's supposed to be? Is he going to be able to win games against the Rams and the Seahawks on the road? I don't know. So we'll have to see what happens, but I think they'll still win enough games for sure. Will they make that wild card? Yeah, probably. I don't see, I guess you have like the Saints. So I guess probably the Saints and the Niners are probably my two, who's going to make the wild card out of those two teams. I think that's a real question. So I guess we'll see what happens with that. But I probably have them under, and I think it'll be 10 wins.
Interesting. Yeah. Rams at 10.5 as well. Also with the 49ers being a 10.5 and Seahawks being a 10. I'm over on the Rams too. I think the Rams are probably the division favorite, although I could see the Niners or Seahawks winning this division pretty easily. I like Stafford. I think he's a top 12 guy when fully healthy and he has his mojo going. And this defense should be a top 5 defense, if not the best defense in the league. Last year, they were arguably, or maybe not arguably, the best defense in the league as well. Just too much talent. On the offensive side, they just did trade for Sony Michel, which I don't think is a big trade, but he's a guy that can, at the very least, I don't know what that is. He's a guy that should be able to get what the offensive line gives, which means that your offensive running attack won't be as bad as something like the Steelers was last year, where it's just completely incompetent. We'll see when Akers comes back. I don't know the full injury on that. I don't know.
He's out for the year.
He's out for the year. Okay, so
it's Henderson is
yes. Yeah, we'll see what happens on that. I mean, I don't know, but Sony Michel should be good enough to at least be an okay person in the backfield. In terms of receiving, I mean, Kupp and Woods should be good. They're not great, but that's good. Stafford again is a good guy, and that defense should be able to win a lot of games. The biggest concerns are probably the backfield and probably the division. The division is just the biggest concern to me because you have other than those two things, you kind of have everything. So
yeah, I'm going over as well. I really like the Rams. I've always liked Matt Stafford, and for him to be on a really good team with weapons. Not that he didn't have weapons in Detroit, but I don't know, like just the coach, obviously McVay's going to have people open all the time. The offense is always going to be upbeat and fast, which I think works with Stafford. Obviously, he can throw the long ball. I think when he's healthy and on a team like this, I think he's for sure top 10 quarterback. I think he has that talent. Now, obviously, he's older. If this was like 3-4 years ago, it'd be a perfect fit, like absolutely perfect. But he's still not out of his prime at all. I think he's at the end of the prime, but he's still there. The defense won't be as good as it was last year with Brandon Staley's not there anymore. I don't know. I mean, it's like you still have Donald and Ramsey. They did lose that couple guys in their secondary to Cleveland though, which I think hurts a little bit. So we'll see how good the back end of that secondary is. Now, obviously Ramsey's still going to be really good, but yeah, I think they're over 10.5. I think for sure. We'll see what happens when the playoffs come, but for the regular season, yeah, I probably have him at like 12 or 13 wins. I think maybe even 14 possibly.
And the last team here is the Bucks at 12.
Wow.
To me, I'm gonna go over. I don't think they're actually gonna be much over. I think they're like a 13-win team. I don't know that they're gonna be the 1 seed. If you made me pick them or the field, I would go the field for sure on the number 1 seed. But I'm gonna go over. To me, if you told me that no NFC teams get over 12 wins, I'd be surprised. I think one of the NFC West teams probably will. I think probably the Packers will be above 12 wins. And I have probably the Bucks at like 13. So I'm going to go over. And I don't even think I need to talk about that team. We've already talked about it enough. And we know that team's pretty insane talent wise.
So, yeah, I think 12 is a tough number because if it was 12.5, I think I'm going under because I think they probably get 12. But 12, I don't even know where to go. I'm gonna say under. I think this team, when the playoffs come, I think they will be ready. But I think the regular season, there may be somewhat of a hangover. Kind of just expecting we'll be in the playoffs and we'll do what we did last year. And I don't know. I think a lot of people are picking this team to kind of be like 13-4, 14-3, like pretty easily. And I think this division, I think the Falcons could take a game off them if they, if their defense can show up for one game. I think they can for sure take a game off them. The Saints can definitely take a game, maybe even two, possibly, probably not, but at least one. So that you're 4-2 in that division. I think that kind of hurts you trying to go over 12 wins. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go under. I think it'll be 11, and I really wouldn't be surprised if it is 12 or 13, but I'm gonna go under.
Yeah, I don't have this team being 14 either. I kind of agree on the sentiment with you on this team, but I do think they're 13. I think they're more likely to be 13 than they are 11. So that's why I'm going over. But
Yeah.
that's the NFC teams. I don't think I missed any. I'm pretty sure. I'm like 99% sure I didn't miss
Nah,
any.
we got all 16.
Okay, cool. Next episode we will do the AFC, and I'm sure we'll talk about other stuff as well. That'll be in the podcast studio. So looking forward to it. We'll get back into NFL stuff once the regular season kicks off as well. So it's going to be super exciting. NBA, I mean, we're kind of in that dead period now with the NBA, but eventually we're going to get into NBA stuff. October something is when the NBA season starts. I think we talked about it earlier, but October something, obviously during October, we have MLB stuff as well, with the postseason going to be starting somewhat soon. That'll be exciting. Yankees have won 13 straight at this point, I think.
Yep.
So we'll see. The what's the name of the Dodgers division? Pacific?
The West.
Is it the West? What am I thinking? Pacific? Am I thinking NBA?
Basketball is.
Yeah, I'm thinking NBA. Jesus, my brain is just so fried at this point. That division race is super exciting. I think the Dodgers are like 1.5 games behind at this point, 2 games behind.
Yeah, something like that.
So, yeah. What did I say? Pacific? Jeez.
Said the Warriors.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll be back probably within the next few days. So feel free to check socials out in the description, all that stuff. See you later. Also, actually, one more thing, before we go. We may or may not have a new name. I guess you'll see by the next episode, I want to say. We'll have a new logo though, for sure. So goodbye.